It was supposed to be a joyful day. Emily, my daughter-in-law, was in her second trimester, and the whole family had been waiting for this ultrasound. My son Daniel held her hand tightly in the hospital waiting room while Margaret, my wife, sat flipping through a magazine, pretending to be calm. I sat quietly, watching them, feeling that strange mix of anxiety and excitement every family feels before news like this. But when Dr. Rosen finally walked out, his expression made my stomach drop. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly as he held the chart. Instead of congratulating us, he cleared his throat and asked, "Sir, could I speak to you privately?" Confused, I followed him into his office. He closed the door, lowered his voice, and after a long silence, he said something that nearly stopped my heart. "You need to think carefully about your marriage. For your own sake, consider divorce." I blinked at him, stunned. "Excuse me? What are you talking about?" Dr. Rosen avoided my eyes, staring instead at the chart in his hands. "I can't disclose details about your daughter-in-law's ultrasound due to confidentiality. But what I saw, it suggests something deeply personal. Something that involves you more than you realize." I felt heat rising in my chest. "What does my marriage have to do with Emily's baby?" He hesitated, then leaned forward. I shouldn't even be saying this, but I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent. "Please protect yourself. Some truths destroy families. Divorce may be the only way you'll survive what's coming." I walked out of his office numb, his words echoing in my ears. Divorce. From Margaret, my wife of over 30 years. But why? That night, the house felt colder than ever. Margaret served dinner like nothing was wrong, chatting about Emily's cravings and Daniel's long work hours. I barely touched my food, my mind replaying Dr. Rosen's warning. She noticed my silence. "You've hardly said a word tonight. Is something wrong?" I forced a smile. "Just tired." But as I watched her pour herself a glass of wine, her hand steady, her eyes calm, I wondered, what could she be hiding from me? Lying in bed later, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, thinking of every late-night phone call Margaret had taken, every unexplained absence, every time she brushed off my questions with a smile. For the first time in decades, I doubted the woman beside me. Over the next week, small details began to gnaw at me. Margaret left the house earlier than usual, saying she had errands. She spent long hours with friends I hadn't met. Emily, too, seemed unusually tense, avoiding eye contact when I asked how she was feeling. One afternoon, while Margaret was showering, her phone lit up on the nightstand. A message preview appeared. "We need to be more careful. Someone will find out." My heart stopped. The sender's name was hidden under a simple initial, D. I wanted to unlock the phone, but guilt and fear held me back. Instead, I slipped it back, pretending I hadn't seen anything. But the seed of suspicion had already rooted deep inside me. The following Sunday, we gathered for dinner at Daniel and Emily's place. Emily's belly was beginning to show, and Daniel proudly rested his hand on it throughout the meal. Margaret looked at them with unusual intensity, almost as if she were carrying a secret. At one point, Emily excused herself to the kitchen. I followed, meaning only to offer help, but when she turned and saw me, her face drained of color. She whispered, trembling, Has anyone told you?" I froze. "Told me what?" Before she could answer, Margaret's voice rang out from the dining room. "Emily, we need you in here." Emily jumped, nodded quickly, and slipped past me. Whatever she had meant to say died in her throat. I was left alone, heart pounding, certain that everyone knew something I didn't. Unable to bear the uncertainty, I called Dr. Rosen a few days later. "I need to know," I begged. "What exactly did you see?" His voice was tense. "I told you, I can't break confidentiality. But sometimes, ultrasound results reveal genetic markers, traits that raise questions about paternity." I swallowed hard. "Are you saying Daniel might not be the father?" Silence. Then, quietly, "I'm saying the child's traits suggest a connection that doesn't fit. A connection to you, perhaps indirectly. Please understand, I can't explain more without violating the law." I hung up, shaking. A connection to me. What could that mean? Tension grew heavier by the day. Emily cried often behind closed doors. Daniel became irritable, snapping at the smallest things. And Margaret, She seemed more distant than ever, often lost in thought. One night, I finally asked her, "Margaret, is there something you need to tell me?" She froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. Then she smiled faintly. "After 30 years of marriage, you still don't trust me?" Her words cut deep, but they didn't erase the gnawing doubts. The silence between us stretched longer than the conversations. I couldn't take it anymore. I searched Margaret's closet while she was out. Inside a small box, hidden beneath old scarves, I found hospital documents. My hands trembled as I unfolded them. They weren't Emily's records. They were Margaret's. Fertility treatments, dated from years ago. Notes about donor insemination. But the name on the donor form made my knees weaken, Dr. Rosen. My mind raced. Was the doctor warning me because he himself was connected to our family's darkest secret? I confronted Dr. Rosen in his office. "Why is your name on my wife's medical records?" He sighed heavily, removing his glasses. "I was young then. Margaret came to me desperate. She told me you couldn't father more children. Against protocol, I helped her personally. Daniel isn't your son. He's mine." The room spun. My son. My daughter-in-law. The baby. The connection he had hinted at finally made sense. Daniel's baby carried markers that tied back to him, the biological father. I walked home that night broken. Every memory of Daniel's childhood flashed through my mind. The first steps, the ball games, the proud smile on his graduation day. None of it was mine, not by blood. When I entered the house, Margaret was waiting, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted you to know," she whispered. "But I loved you. I still love you." I looked at her, at the woman who had shared 3 decades of my life, and at the son who was never truly mine. Dr. Rosen's warning echoed in my mind. Protect yourself. Divorce may be the only way. But how do you divorce not just a wife, but an entire life built on lies? The story ends not with an answer, but with the weight of a choice no man should ever have to make. The hospital waiting room smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee, that sterile combination that never lets you forget where you are. The fluorescent lights hummed quietly overhead. Emily sat across from me, her hands folded tightly over the swell of her stomach. She was glowing in that way expectant mothers often do, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Daniel, my son, leaned over and whispered something in her ear, making her laugh nervously. He had always been attentive, always trying to ease tension with a joke or a gentle squeeze of the hand. Watching them, I felt a familiar swell of pride. Whatever else life had thrown at me, Daniel had turned into a good man. Margaret, my wife of over 3 decades, sat beside me flipping through a glossy magazine. She wasn't really reading, it was just a distraction. Her perfectly painted nails tapped against the page, a rhythm too steady to be casual. She was nervous too, though she'd never admit it. When the door to the examination area finally opened, Dr. Rosen stepped out. His expression was not what any of us expected. No warm smile, no congratulations. His lips pressed into a thin line, his eyes darting toward me before settling on the floor. "Mr. Williams," he said quietly, his voice low enough that my family didn't catch it. "Could I have a word with you? In private." I frowned, rising slowly. Emily looked confused. Daniel reached for my arm. "Dad, what's going on?" "I'll be right back," I murmured, following the doctor down the corridor. He led me into his office, closing the door firmly behind us. The blinds were drawn, shutting out the soft chatter of nurses in the hallway. I sat across from him, my palms suddenly damp, while he shuffled the ultrasound images on his desk like cards he didn't want to play. Finally, he looked me in the eye. His face was pale, drawn. I shouldn't be saying this. In fact, it's against every regulation I've sworn to uphold. But I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I stayed silent. My chest tightened. "What's this about?" He inhaled sharply. "It's about your marriage. For your own sake, you need to think very carefully about whether to stay in it. In fact, you may want to consider divorce." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Divorce. After 30 years with Margaret? Over something connected to Emily's ultrasound? I leaned forward, gripping the edge of his desk. What does my marriage have to do with my daughter-in-law's pregnancy? His eyes flickered with something. Fear, regret, maybe both. He lowered his voice even further. There are connections. things revealed in the scan that suggest ties deeper than you realize. I can't explain without breaking confidentiality, but please listen to me. Protect yourself. Some truths can destroy an entire family. The room felt smaller, suffocating. My ears rang with the sound of my own heartbeat. Divorce. Protect yourself. Connections. None of it made sense, but all of it terrified me. I stumbled out of his office in a daze, my family waiting just a few doors down. Emily smiled weakly, Daniel's hand resting protectively on her shoulder, Margaret watching me with that sharp, unreadable gaze of hers. And for the first time in years, I couldn't look my wife in the eye. The rain followed me home, drumming on the windshield, blurring brake lights into red smears. Margaret rode beside me, watching the road. "What did he want?" she asked, voice light, almost playful. "A donation for the maternity wing." "Nothing important," I said too quickly. She noticed. She always noticed. At home, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and old books. Margaret kicked off her heels, poured herself a glass of Cabernet, and set it on a coaster with the precision she used for everything. "You're pale," she said. "You didn't tell me they were going to draw your blood." "They didn't." I took off my jacket and hung it on the chair instead of the peg, a minor rebellion in a neat life. She leaned against the counter, studying me. "Then what did Dr. Rosen say?" "He congratulated us." I lied. "Normal scan." We ate in near silence. Cutlery clinked. The grandfather clock ticked like an accusation. Halfway through dinner, Margaret's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and flipped it face down. "Telemarketer," she said. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. After dishes, I retreated to the den and called Dr. Rosen from my cell, door closed, TV on mute for cover. He answered on the second ring, voice hushed. "You shouldn't call me," he said, but didn't hang up. "You blindsided me," I said. "You tell me to consider divorcing my wife and expect me to just, what? Meditate on that?" He exhaled, a ragged sound. "The scan shows markers, familial markers. To interpret them, you'd need context I can't give. Think back on your marriage, on who had access, on what was possible and what wasn't. You're talking in riddles. I'm trying not to go to prison. A brittle beat. Listen. If there are truths in your marriage that were curated, you deserve to confront them on your own terms. Don't wait for them to confront you." The call clicked dead. I stared at my reflection in the black TV screen. A man in his late 50s, hair going silver at the temples, eyes lined by years of midnights and mortgages. A man who suddenly didn't trust the ground under his feet. Margaret knocked once and opened the door without waiting. "Emily texted," she said. "She wants us there Sunday. She's making pot roast." Then softer. "Are you angry with me?" I looked at her, the woman who shared my bed, my house, my memories. Should I be? Her mouth parted, surprise flashing across her face. Then she composed herself. "You tell me." Hook. Later, when she fell asleep, her phone lit the dark with a message. "We need to be careful. Someone will find out." The next morning, the house felt staged, like a set waiting for actors. Margaret moved through it with choreographed efficiency. Laundry, calendar, the stack of mail she sorted into neat piles. I watched her and felt like I'd never studied her closely before. She noticed me noticing and smiled like we were both pretending. At work, my concentration shattered into shards. I wrote emails I didn't send, opened documents I didn't read. I Googled ultrasound familial markers and closed the results before they loaded. At lunch, I sat in my car and listened to voicemail messages I'd already heard just to fill the air. By evening, Margaret was in the kitchen scarf tying a roast chicken, the air warming with rosemary and lemon. "Daniel used to hate the smell of rosemary," she mused. "Remember? He'd wrinkle his nose and say it smelled like a Christmas tree fell in the soup." "He was 6, I said automatically. "You told him it was magic leaves." She laughed, a small, genuine sound, and for a second I wanted to let the past sand down the present. But the message I'd read the night before, "We need to be careful," throbbed like a bruise. At dinner, I tried for normal. "House book club." "Good," she said. "They picked the night manager." I told them I preferred memoirs. Her phone buzzed again. She flipped it face down. "Who keeps calling?" "Spam." She sipped her wine. "Why?" Because you keep turning your phone over like it's indecent. She set the glass down with care. Are you accusing me of something? I met her eyes. Held them. Not yet. The rest of the week unfurled in whispers. Emily texted photos of nursery paint swatches, sage, pale blue, butter yellow. Daniel called to ask if I could help assemble a crib. Margaret stayed late with friends, came home with the scent of someone else's detergent on her sweater, and placed her phone screen down like it was sleeping. Friday night, she showered. In the steam, the bathroom fan hummed. I stood in the bedroom and stared at her phone on the nightstand, heart pounding. The message preview lit up. D. Call me when you're alone. My breath hitched. D. Daniel? My son. No. It had to be someone else. A co-worker. A friend from the museum. D could be anyone. I didn't open the phone. I told myself I had principles. Or maybe I was afraid of confirming the story I'd started to write in my head. She came out wrapped in a towel, hair damp. You look like you saw a ghost, she said lightly. Just tired, I lied. Hook! On Sunday at their dinner table, Emily would almost say the thing that would break us. But Margaret would speak first.